right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, this is going to be a fun one. We are talking about Better Man, which is the Robbie Williams biopic where he is portrayed by a CGI chimp. This movie's insane, and it's also really good, and no one is going to see it for some reason, and you should go see it. I'm probably going to be rearranging some of my episodes so I can get this out while the movie is still in theaters. So if you hear this in my small little way of getting the word out about movies, go watch this movie because it is a blast, and it's a shame that nobody is watching it. But that said, we have a great episode coming up. Courtney Howard, film critic, is joining me for this one. We get into a lot of great puzzle pieces, a really fun conversation, and yeah, that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on all the social medias at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. With that said, let's get into Better Man. All right, it's time to talk about Better Man, and I'm joined today by Courtney Howard. How's it going, Courtney?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to talk about this one. It's, one of those movies that, it technically is a 2024 movie, but it's just kind of coming out in the theaters right now in January, and not doing so well, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I loved this movie, and I know you did too. Before we get to it, though, it is your first time on the show. Tell my listeners a little about you and what you do.
I am a film critic and entertainment journalism person, but mostly film critic these days, since they're sort of phasing out a lot of entertainment journalists and going for influencers.
Yeah.
That's a whole another show. But yeah, mostly film critic now. I write for Variety, the AV Club, and freshfiction.tv. I'm literally almost always on Twitter, still until its dying breath. Also on Blue Sky and Instagram. I only recently set up a Letterboxd account, but mostly just to track like what movies I see during the year and
It's a
how
nice
many.
tool.
And yeah, it's nice for that. I don't like it for socializing though. So
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
That's fair. And especially if you're online as much as we are, we don't need to be on every single one of these things.
No,
but
and especially
yeah.
with Letterboxd too. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like nobody's paying me for a review on Letterboxd. So I'm going to be quipping on Letterboxd. And I saw some people getting angry about that. And it's like, get a life.
Yeah, seriously. So we have talked in the past about getting you on the show. I'm very happy to have you here today. I do want to mention really quick though, when I posted asking if anybody wants to be on a Better Man episode, I don't think I've ever gotten so many responses from, I don't know if it's the Robbie Williams fan club coming out of the woodworks here or what it is. And the fact that this movie isn't doing well, I don't get it because everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody's so excited about it. You said that you were a Robbie Williams fan previous to this?
Yeah. So I got into him. So not during the Take That years, but during his solo career. So I entered in around, I don't know, when was that? 97, 98.
Sure.
It was with the Millennium video, a song he now doesn't really like because he doesn't like the lyrics. But so that was my first introduction to Robbie Williams. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, he's actually really good. And I kind of like the song. And the song, it has an interpolation of John Barry's theme from James Bond. So I was like, oh, this is kind of hooky and stuff. And so it was just off and running. I bought the Ego Has Landed album, which is more of a compilation of his first two albums. So I bought that and stuck it in my car, and it literally has not come out of any of the cars that I've owned since.
Yeah.
So I like his music. I've bought things since. I followed his career since. I watched some of his concerts, what can be available here in America versus, they're super fans in England, but
Sure.
Here we don't get it as much because he just didn't cross over here. So I introduced my friends to him, his music and stuff. And granted, they are not diehard fans, but like they know who he is because of me. So,
Yeah, sure.
um, but yeah, so it's been good. And like he's sort of done different genres and he has a voice. I mean, you see it and you hear it in Better Man where he can sing, jazz standards and, the American Songbook and do more of his like rock and roll stuff. And
Yeah.
so like,
He's a
I
huge
don't,
talent.
he's
He's a
huge.
huge talent, and
Oh yeah.
he does all different kinds of things. It just didn't translate here for whatever reason. I remember because I was working promoting bands back in the early 2000s, and I remember him like it was right around the Greatest Hits album, like 2004 ish or whatever. And I remember him and his personality. I just never did the deep dive into his music that much, but I always kind of like I was like, that guy seems interesting, And so but I never really got into his music that much, and I really like it. It's definitely along the lines of things that I would have gotten into if I had ever listened to it. And after this movie, I've been listening like the last couple of days now to a lot of his stuff, and I've been really digging into it a lot. But let's start getting into the movie here because this is such an interesting one because we get, two or three of these music biopics a year, and they mostly either are awful or at the best, they're just kind of par for the course. So to do something interesting with the form makes this a very exciting episode to get into. And I think we can get into some interesting stuff here, but let's get into our puzzle pieces here. What do you have for your first puzzle piece? What is something you think might have inspired Better Man in some way?
Well, I think my closest sort of match to it would be All That Jazz, where it's a
Hmm.
man dealing with his addictions, whether that's be, philandering or, substance abuse, and looking at it in terms of his career. So that would be my first sort of like major draw. I don't have many of these puzzle pieces figured out, but
Uh-huh.
that's the big one that I thought of.
Absolutely. That was actually number 1 on my list as well, and that movie is just so amazing, and,
Sure.
Bob Fosse telling his own story in a way that's as large as could possibly be. I mean, that is in a very different way what Williams is doing here with Better Man and telling his story, but through the lens of a chimpanzee playing him. It's another interesting, unique way to tell your own story, and to kind of fill it with so many like themes and ideas. That was the thing that struck me. I only saw All That Jazz for the first time a few years ago, and I was just blown away by it. And I was like, this movie is not just about him, but it's about everything. It's about, life, death, love, success, fame, all these things, and just packing it in there. And I mean, clearly, Robbie Williams wanted that out of this. And, with Michael Gracey, as a director, like he found somebody to collaborate with to kind of just throw it all into his life story in a really wild way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he tackles it in the same sort of like manner of looking at his life introspectively and this soul searching aspect. I feel like it's a connected sort of soul, whether or not they knew it or not, or they felt it. To me, it feels very like viscerally connected, the two
Yeah,
movies.
I think so too. I'll go to the closest like current analog I think to this movie, which would be Rocketman, the Elton John
Hmm.
biopic,
Hmm.
which also tries to do something different with a otherwise very I'm talking about how they're all kind of the same these biopics, but it's still the dad issues and the infighting with the other band members and the making the songs and the getting famous. It's still hitting all those beats, but doing something fun and unique and exciting with it, with Rocketman turning everything into a very over the top, as you would have to do to cover Elton John performance. And Taron Egerton's great in it, and the movie kind of just turns everything up to the highest possible turned up to 11, I guess you would say, for how this kind of a movie could go. And it's a really fun one for that, and even though it hits all those familiar beats, you still have a really great time with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's another great connected film to this, not just from that aspect, but also like the distributor here in the States is the same. It's Paramount, and they're
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
a large risk and a large swing. And, I don't think Rocketman, I think it did okay here, but not to the level that it did elsewhere. And that seems to be what we're seeing with Better Man as well. But
Mm,
these are big, bold, like jukebox musicals that, these are just takes the formula and like remixes it. It's like a rise and fall, you know, there's only so much you can do with a behind the music kind of like
sure.
biography. So both of these films do that just brilliantly and sort of remix things. It's what's in between the outline that they really fill out in just like a great way, in an interesting way.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
loved Rocketman. I loved how it sort of like it leads with the emotionality of the songs, of the feelings, of like just everything.
Yeah, absolutely. The jukebox musical kind of format can be very hit or miss, and I think they use it in both of these movies to great effect. And it's something that, like, I feel like every time I'm doing a music biopic episode, I'm always bringing up Bohemian Rhapsody, and I finally don't have to bring that up here because we're not so focused on the songwriting and like, oh, we have access to just the drums, so we're going to play that for a minute, and then someone's going to come up with a bass line, and obviously that didn't happen, but that's what they always kind of have to build these around. And Rocket Man's one where they absolutely did not have to build it around, and same goes for here with Better Man, which definitely is a much more enjoyable experience. But let's go to another puzzle piece. What do you got next?
So this is probably not on your list unless you were a super Robbie Williams fan. So one of his songs that he had put out a while back is called "Me and My Monkey,"
Okay.
and it's about his drug addiction and it being, the monkey on his back and how he takes this trip and with this monkey. And you listeners can look it up. I'm not going to sing it. I'm not going to like go into it, but it's very
Maybe on the
self-explanatory.
Patreon we could get that. We'll see.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I'll karaoke it on for
Yeah.
the Patreon
Yeah.
members. Um, but that's one that I thought a direct link to, like, oh, maybe in the back of their minds, not just my interpretation of it is like this man, he feels like this, you know, being who is evolving into a human in
Sure.
the movie. But I think on another level, maybe he was thinking there was some sort of direct connection to that song. And
That's interesting. I did not know about that song, like you said, and yeah, I do feel like the whole being portrayed by a chimp thing. There's so many ways to read it, and I mean, like, there's kind of the official way, but then there's clearly other things at play here, and it's I don't know. It's just really fun, and I think it kind of shows where he's at with like just the sense of humor and all that, and like just it's definitely a very Robbie Williams thing from anything that I know about him, and the fact that he has that song, I definitely have to go listen to that one. Yeah, great one. I want to throw like a kind of an unconventional one on my list here. Something I just couldn't stop thinking about during this movie is Michael Jackson.
mm,
Speaking of monkeys and bubbles, but not a specific movie. Although I guess you could maybe talk about Moonwalker. And of course, we have this Anton Fuqua Michael movie coming out. Who knows what that's going to be like? But just the idea of pop stardom and taking it to the moon, basically, like just going as big as possible. I feel like Michael Jackson would love this movie. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like it's a vision, an artist pushing boundaries, something that on paper sounds insane and not doable whatsoever, and making that come to life. That is like that spirit of what Michael Jackson and all of his collaborators would always be up to. And I obviously Robbie Williams being a big pop star, like that is kind of the vein that he's in there. And it's just something that I kept thinking about. Like, man, this is like in that kind of world. And obviously, we don't have Michael Jackson stuff anymore, but it's kind of the kind of thing that we might have seen from him. Something of a biopic that goes in a very unique, different kind of way like that. And also maybe like you could answer this. I don't actually know, but like how much input Robbie Williams had in this? Because I mean, he's not a writer, and he's an executive producer, but I mean, clearly he wanted to tell his story this way and somehow got the people together to make it happen.
Yeah, so my second screening of this, there was a Q&A after with him and some of the creatives on there, the director as well. And it sort of started out of, them talking together, Michael Gracey and Robbie Williams talking together. And Robbie had sent him like 3 hours of tapes of him sort of narrating his life and like telling these crazy stories because he's such a great storyteller. And I think that
Mm,
sort of comes across a little bit in the movie, but
hmm.
far, far much like like a lot more when you see interviews with him, especially like if you go back and watch Graham Norton video, like, appearances, like he's a really great storyteller. And sometimes his stories get him in trouble with the people that he's telling the stories with, but he has
Mm,
no filter. So a lot of the, like, when you hear Robbie Williams talking in the movie, that's some of that stuff is directly from those tapes that he sent.
okay.
And there's the editor was saying there were so many other stories from those tapes that got left out. There was a whole, like, there was some other story he was starting to go into, but then stopped because they're like, oh, we don't have time for that. It's like, oh, we have time for that other story that didn't
Yeah.
get included. They
Yeah.
didn't film anything for it, but it was like on those tapes. Um, so you do hear, like, it is very much him. And one of the behind the scenes, like, CGI things was like those eyes, the chimp's eyes, those are Robbie's eyes that
Mm,
they are using in the movie too. So it's not like it's a mix of the actor portraying him as the chimpanzee. So it's John O'Davies portraying him, and a lot of it is like him doing an imitation of Robbie Williams, but like so perfectly. Like Robbie was like,
sure.
he does a better Robbie than I do. So he was even like super impressed with what he was doing. But the narration that you hear is pure Robbie, and the songs singing is Robbie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Before we go to your next puzzle piece, should we just throw in here as an extra puzzle piece Planet of the Apes, specifically Andy Serkis and all of what
Yeah.
he has done in pushing forward with motion capture and the Caesar character? That's got to be an actual influence on, oh, this is
Yeah.
actually something we can make. We can do this, so let's try it.
Yeah.
It's
That was
such a
literally
crazy
my next
idea.
piece. That was
Okay, well then there we
the
go.
next
Let's
thing.
go for it. Let's just go deeper into that because yeah, I mean it has been I don't think anybody expected the last few Planet of the Apes movies to be as good as they are, and they're so good, and a big part of it is because they have just pushed the envelope forward every time, maybe more than anything. And this movie, when we see this chimpanzee, he's actually like emoting in a way that CGI characters just don't. And I think, Andy Serkis kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that. That's true. Like, I don't see how it's not an influence. Like just laying the groundwork, and even for the actor himself, I'm sure he was influenced by that work. I mean, it's a tough job, and I think, I'm going to go out on a limb and say sometimes it's even tougher than just using your face and what you have. Like it's
Sure.
literally like you have to find that balance, and it's just equally as much of an art form as if it was just you and like the actor and the camera.
Yeah.
I think it's tougher.
I bet it is. And yeah, the people that do it really successfully, it's
God
wild that
bless.
they do it. Yeah, seriously. Um, I'm gonna bring up Babylon as another puzzle piece. This is I think you're a Babylon Hive
Mhm.
fellow member, aren't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
yeah. I
Babylon.
It's so good. That's another thing that I kept thinking about during this movie is how the whole thing just unfolds as a kind of like an ever-growing magic trick where you're just like, how are they pulling all this shit off? And like that's something you definitely feel during Babylon, love it or hate it. There's a lot happening, and we just don't see movie making like that very often anymore. Where there's just so many extras, so much choreography, so many things happening on screen. And during some of these musical numbers, I mean, we had a bunch of musicals last year, and some of them were really good. But I mean, some of these musical moments are definitely the best of any that I saw last year. The Rock DJ performance is insane. The Let Me Entertain You performance is just so over the top and
Mhm.
crazy. A lot of this feels in line with that, just like we're putting on a show that Babylon really did.
Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely see that connection as well, like, just the craziness of it all too, like, you have a chimpanzee doing cocaine and drinking and, just being nuts, and, like, I don't know how, like I don't know how people are not seeing that and being like, "Yes, I need to see this movie." Like,
Right.
you're not gonna find this in a normal, like, traditional biopic, like, A Complete Unknown's not doing this shit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh man. What do you got next?
I would say a little far reaching out there, but not too far because they share some of the same technical workers. The Paddington movies,
Mm,
just because nobody treats him as a chimp. He's just Robbie, you know?
yeah.
So nobody treats him as anything different. And like there's a little bit of like, oh, he's a bear in Paddington, but everybody just sort of accepts that there's a bear walking around and, his get up in London. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
my like sort of far reaching, and one of the guys who worked on Paddington worked on this movie too. So I was like, all right, I can kind of see it.
I think it's a good one. I think it's
Yeah.
definitely a good one. I also love the idea of Robbie Williams and Paddington being two of Britain's big exports. Like
Yeah.
it's very fun to put those two together. Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And who doesn't love Paddington? So
Yeah, I
great one
mean,
to
they're both
include.
kings in my house, so,
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to put something that I haven't seen before on the list, but it's just something that kind of came to mind. And it's those Sing movies where they have a bunch of animals singing major pop songs.
Mm.
Uh, those movies look completely insane. Like I said, I haven't seen them, but I think there's probably a chimp in those movies. There's definitely a lion. I remember that from the trailer. There's a bear. There's all kinds of
There's
animals
an
singing.
ape voiced by Taron Egerton in the movie,
There
and
you
he
go.
has
Bringing it
to
around.
like find his voice and learn to sing. That's the first movie. That's
Okay.
the main part of that. And like
Wow.
his dad is disapproving of him singing. It's not that his dad is like you're nobody, but his dad is just disapproving.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a sing hater, so I don't love those movies.
Yeah. There
Um,
was a moment where the trailer for the third one, that's the most recent one, that one kept playing over and over, and I was like, "Oh, this movie." Yeah, but hopefully I don't have to watch those anytime soon. Do you have any other pieces you want to bring up here?
no, that's about it.
All right, all right. I would just throw in one last one, just to kind of going on the same vein as a lot of these other unconventional biopics, but weird, the Al Yankovic story.
Mm,
Somebody telling their own story in a very unique way. It's
that's
still
true.
getting into those familiar beats, but turning them upside down. And of course, this isn't really a parody in the way that Weird Al structures his movie, but
It is
it
a
is a
heightened
very,
atmosphere, though. The
yes,
same
very
heightened
heightened.
atmosphere.
Exactly. So throw that one on the list as well. But I think we got into a lot of really great movies here that kind of fit the bill. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to get into about Better Man that we didn't really bring up here?
The movie itself, or the like related to these movies, or just
Just about the movie itself. Any major things? I'll throw one out there right now. Is how fun it was to see Oasis being portrayed in a movie. So that was
yeah.
just a great moment for me.
I wasn't sure how I was going to go because he had a very long standing rivalry with them,
Yeah,
and especially when Nicole ran off, like when Nicole went off with I can't remember which of the brothers, but
one of
when
them.
she
Yeah.
started dating him, it was like, oh my God, like this is going to send Robbie through the roof, like from what little I know. Um, but yeah, it was funny to see them portrayed. And it's funny to have like see them portrayed as like a gas, seeing
Yeah.
them there. And I will say, like, the movie does play around with like the timeline, and it doesn't like even broach like what happens after, in the movie timeline. It doesn't even broach what happens after. So, like, it doesn't get into him actually marrying like a wonderful woman who changed his life and his sobriety, and
Mm,
having kids like changed his life and sobriety as well,
yeah.
and his like future, like a lot of his future hits were like left out too, which I get it. Like this is a good like closed, sort of timeline to do it. And granted, like in real life, the Nebworth thing came after the like Royal Albert Hall thing, but like who cares? Like
All right.
in terms of the story that it's telling, I think it's a great dramatic arc. So that's sort of forgivable. But I was surprised at how in with the movie how much the dad played in it versus his mom, because his mom plays a lot, like his mom's stuff in real life was more of the like, hook and linchpin, like at the Royal Albert Hall performance. Like, he said thank
Hmm.
you to his mom, and he got into swing music. I believe, I may be misremembering, but I don't think I am. I believe he got into that kind of music from his mom, but maybe it was through his dad. I don't know, but like, I think it's through his mom. So like, it was a little bit like, I was like, oh, the mom's not really factoring in here. I get that they just want to focus on the one parent, but
Yeah.
um,
I wonder how much of that is, he obviously has the whole cocky exterior and all that, but maybe it's a little personal and he wants to actually keep that for himself in a way. I don't know. So
yeah.
like kind of create a version of the story here with the dad to apply all that stuff to. I do think it's funny though, just to kind of go back to what you were saying about the sobriety. Again, as far as like traditional biopics, like that would be the end goal in most of these kind of movies is getting sober. Here, nope, he's still, he's
Hmm.
still just putting on these shows and getting loaded the whole time. So
Hmm.
that's just part of the ride of this movie, though.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, the whole thing is so fun. Like, for I finally showed it to my husband the other night, and he only knew Robbie Williams through me, but it was only like a very superficial. Like, he remembered a few songs, not a lot.
mhm.
So he watched it and really enjoyed it too. But I think it plays for people who are not fans, and then people who are super fans. Like, there's little Easter eggs throughout. Like, there's like nods to the clothing that they wore at the time, or like videos too. Like, I think the car that he apologizes to Nicole in is the same car from the Millennium video. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I'm not quite a car woman, but I think that's correct. But so it's like little things here and there. Like, there's a Northern Scum thing, like emblazoned on a beanie. Maybe other super fans would say, but I know that's a lyric to in one of his songs. So there's like little things here and there, I think, that they toss in for like super fans that know, that sort of add things in, and even songs that didn't make it into being sung in the movie are sort of threaded through in the score too. So like, they play Kids, which is his duet with Kylie Minogue, which I'm a huge
Hmm.
Kylie Minogue fan, partly because of like the Kids duet with Robbie. So like, that's how I got into her. And so like, that's at the very beginning in the score, and then they, use something like the a little bit of the Something Stupid, his duet with Nicole Kidman, when he's like falling down the stairs and stuff. So like,
Forgot about that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so like, he's had a lot of hits here, but I think people just have ignored it, or like, I don't know, they just sort of Angels was big, and like, they even used like my good memory part of my brain that still works. Remembered when they used Let Me Entertain You as like the NBC lineup for like Thursday nights, like must see
Oh,
TV
I kind of
at
remember
one
that.
point. So like, I think people have heard his stuff, but like, sort of just subliminally have just in one ear out the other.
Yeah, there was definitely a few songs that like I was like, "Oh yeah, that is him."
Mhm.
Yeah, I just didn't even realize it. But yeah, I think we've gotten to a lot of great stuff here. Courtney, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, Companion, I really enjoyed. That's coming out soon,
Sure.
at the end of the month. I would say go in as clear as you can. Like, don't watch the trailers. Avoid the poster too if you can.
Mm,
I saw it clear of like almost everything except for the teaser, which really doesn't give away anything. Um, so I saw it like back in no like mid-November. And so the reveals like hit really well. And the movie does, there's a huge twist that the trailer gives away.
mm.
Um, but I think the movie like really extends beyond that. There's so many things that this movie deals with that are smart and just really ingeniously pulled off, and the acting's good. It's like a great, like, fun breezy time at the movie. It's like sort of like a horror comedy but a satire. So
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. I think that's coming out at the end of the month.
Right on. I'm looking forward to that. Well, right on. Courtney, tell people where they can find you and your writing and everything you're up to.
Hmm. I write for, I'm on Variety. I got some reviews on there. Freshfiction.tv. I've got reviews there. Uh, haven't been writing, like, maybe a little bit, not anything recently for AV Club, but some stuff, older stuff is there. find me on Twitter, Instagram. The handle is at Lula Maybell. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I'm glad I was finally able to get you on the show. I always enjoy reading your stuff, and hopefully we'll get you back again sometime.
Thanks for having me. Like, I'm honored to be the Robbie Williams person. Like, I could really have a TED Talk, but I didn't go that far.
Yeah, well, we'll do a sequel one of these days. We'll see what happens.
When Better 2, A Man 2 comes out, then...
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Better Man. If you haven't seen it yet, you already listened to the episode, but go back out to the theaters and go watch the movie. It's so good. And I'm telling you, we're all going to be talking about how the general audience has got this one wrong like 5-10 years from now. Everybody's going to say that they love it. But anyway, thank you so much to Courtney Howard for joining me on that one. Thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. We've got a lot of episodes on the way. I've just been playing some kind of puzzle game, speaking of piecing it together, trying to get all these episodes into some kind of an order. I got all these movies from 2024 that I covered and still have to release the episodes. I got new 2025 movies that I'm covering. I still have end of the year top 10 list episodes coming out. We got top 10 scores, top 10 first time watches, and top 10 of the decade so far at the halfway mark. We're also recording a documentaries episode. Just so much piecing it together on the way. So make sure you are subscribed. So that way, whatever order I put them out in, you'll find out about them when they come out. You can follow me on social media at PiecingPod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. I already told you about both of those things. We do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content for piecing it together, awesome movie year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Just keep listening to the show if you want to support the show. But if you want to support the show in another way, you could also sign up for that Patreon. I'm also always looking for new guests, so do get in touch if you're ever interested in being on a Piecing It Together episode. That is also supporting the show. There's so many ways you could support the show. Hit share, hit like, hit comment, send in your puzzle pieces, all those things. It's all awesome. I really appreciate you all being out there listening. We got to close this with a piece of music like I always do. And yeah, I've got all different kinds of music that I could go with on an episode like this. Is really this movie's so all over the place. I can go in any direction, but I got to go to the Pup Pups, my comedy rock album of songs about my pets. And she may not be a monkey, but she's kind of like a monkey. This one's about my cat Millie, and it's a song called "So Predictable." It's just a hard rockin' fun time about this very predictable little shit who is not a monkey. Although there is a song I'm working on for the next album about her being a monkey, so that's what made me think of it. But yeah, that'll come at a later time. For now, this is "So Predictable" from the latest The Pup Pups album, "A Boy and His Dog and Three Cats and a Bear." Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
Jumping from the couch to the counter, knocking the remote on the floor. Just when you get done with your kibble, we know that you'll be crying for more. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. Doing things that making us crazy. You're so predictable. You know it makes your mama nuts. And every single day in the morning, you always smack your sister cat's butts. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. Playing with a toy, crying when she lost it. She's always in the sink just trying to drink from the faucet. Laying on her back and looking oh so cute, but you know we so predictable. You're so predictable. Just so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. You're so predictable.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.